In every village, every city, and every quiet corner of the world, there is sometimes a person who walks with the weight of endless troubles. Wherever they go, a new storm seems to follow them. One day it is a broken plan, the next day a wounded heart, and the day after that another urgent problem that must be solved immediately. They speak of their suffering often, and they look to others with eyes that silently ask, "Save me." At first, people gather around them with kindness. They listen carefully, offer advice, lend time, energy, and sometimes even their peace of mind. Helping another human being is a noble act, like lighting a lamp in the darkness. But there is a subtle difference between someone who has fallen into a hole and someone who keeps digging the hole deeper while asking others to pull them out. A wise observer learns to watch patterns, not just moments. A single storm does not define the sky, but endless storms in the same place reveal something deeper. When a person always stands at the center of chaos, when every difficulty becomes the responsibility of others, the root of the suffering may not be the world around them, but the habits within them. Some people unknowingly wear the robe of the eternal sufferer. It becomes familiar, almost comfortable. When others rush to rescue them, they receive attention, sympathy, and care. The mind, once it tastes this comfort, may begin to create new troubles without realizing it. The crisis becomes a language through which they seek connection. But true peace does not grow in the soil of constant rescue. A bird cannot learn to fly if every time it moves its wings, someone carries it through the sky. Strength is born when a person faces the wind themselves. This does not mean we should close our hearts. Compassion is one of the purest forces in existence. But compassion must walk together with wisdom. When someone is drowning, you throw a rope. Yet if they refuse to hold the rope and instead ask you to jump into the water every day, both lives will soon sink. The wise helper learns a quiet balance. They listen without absorbing every storm. They care without carrying every burden. They guide others toward their own strength instead of becoming the permanent solution to their problems. Sometimes the greatest act of kindness is not solving the crisis, but gently placing the responsibility back into the hands of the one who created it. In that moment, a door opens. The person may resist at first because walking alone feels frightening, but within that step lies the beginning of real transformation. Life is a teacher that whispers a simple truth. Suffering becomes endless when it is used as an identity. Freedom begins when a person realizes they are not their problems and that the power to change has been within them all along. So when you encounter someone who carries endless crises, keep your heart soft but your mind clear. Offer guidance, not dependence. Offer presence, not rescue. For a person who learns to stand on their own feet discovers something more valuable than sympathy. They discover their own strength. The pattern of endless crisis: some people constantly face problems and emergencies, and they expect others to step in and fix their situations every time. In many walks of life, it is possible to notice a certain pattern in some people's lives. At first glance, it may appear that misfortune simply follows them wherever they go. One day there is a problem with work, the next day there is a conflict with family, and soon after there is another urgent crisis that demands immediate attention. To those around them, it can feel as if a storm cloud permanently hovers above their path. Each time the sky darkens, they turn to the people around them and ask for help, comfort, and solutions. At the beginning, others respond with genuine kindness. When someone is struggling, the natural response of the human heart is to offer support. Friends listen patiently, family members give advice, and sometimes people sacrifice their own time and energy to help solve the situation. In small doses, this kind of support strengthens relationships and reminds us that we are not alone in the world. Compassion is a beautiful quality that allows communities and friendships to grow. However, over time, a careful observer begins to notice something deeper. The crises do not seem to end. Each solution appears to be only temporary because soon another problem takes its place. It becomes less like an occasional storm and more like a repeating cycle. The same person who was helped yesterday returns tomorrow with a new difficulty that must again be solved by others. This pattern raises an important question. Is the world truly creating endless problems for this person, or has the mind become accustomed to living inside the idea of constant crisis? Sometimes people begin to see themselves only through the lens of their struggles. When this happens, their identity slowly becomes tied to the role of the one who is always suffering, always overwhelmed, and always in need of rescue. When a person believes deeply that life is always happening against them, they start to search for evidence of that belief everywhere. Small challenges begin to feel like large disasters. Ordinary misunderstandings become major conflicts. Because they expect difficulty, their attention naturally finds it again and again. Those around them may feel compassion at first, but they may also begin to feel drained. Carrying someone else's storm repeatedly can become heavy. Even the most caring heart needs peace, and when every conversation becomes another emergency, the balance of the relationship begins to shift. True wisdom is not found in ignoring suffering, but in seeing its deeper roots. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do for someone is not to remove every obstacle from their path. but to encourage them to discover their own ability to face life. Strength grows when a person realizes they can stand in the wind without immediately seeking rescue. When people begin to recognize their own power to respond to difficulties, something changes inside them. Problems no longer appear as endless disasters, but as lessons that can be faced and learned from. Slowly, the storms begin to lose their control, and the sky of the mind becomes clearer. In this way, the cycle of endless crisis can be transformed not through constant rescue from others, but through the quiet awakening of personal responsibility and inner strength. Kindness versus enabling helping others is compassionate, but repeatedly solving someone else's problems can unintentionally encourage their dependence. Kindness is one of the most beautiful qualities a human being can possess. When someone is struggling, the natural response of a compassionate heart is to step forward and help. Throughout history, communities have survived and grown stronger because people supported one another during difficult times. Offering comfort, listening to someone's worries, or helping solve a problem can be a powerful expression of care. In these moments, kindness becomes like a warm light that guides someone out of darkness. However, there is a quiet boundary that many people do not notice at first. The difference between helping someone and carrying their entire life on your shoulders can be very subtle. When a person occasionally faces hardship, support can help them regain balance and move forward. But when someone repeatedly depends on others to fix every difficulty, a different dynamic begins to form. At first, those who help may not recognize this shift. They see someone in distress and naturally offer assistance. One problem is solved, then another appears, and again they step in to help. Over time, the helper becomes a permanent problem solver, while the other person becomes someone who always waits for rescue. What began as compassion slowly turns into a habit of dependence. This does not happen because people are cruel or selfish. Often it happens because both sides are acting from good intentions. The helper wants to be supportive, and the one receiving help feels comforted by the attention and care. Yet without realizing it, this cycle can weaken the inner strength of the person being helped. When someone learns that others will always solve their problems, they may stop searching for their own solutions. Their confidence slowly fades because they rarely experience the satisfaction of overcoming challenges on their own. Like a muscle that is never used, their ability to handle difficulties becomes weaker over time. At the same time, the person who is always helping may begin to feel exhausted. Carrying another person's worries day after day can drain emotional energy. The helper may start to feel responsible for things that were never truly theirs to manage. Instead of a balanced relationship where both people grow, one person becomes the rescuer while the other remains in a constant state of crisis. True compassion requires more than simply removing pain in the moment. Wisdom reminds us that real support encourages growth, not dependence. Sometimes the most caring response is not to immediately fix every situation, but to gently guide someone toward finding their own strength. When people learn to face their problems themselves, they begin to trust their own abilities. This kind of support is deeper and more lasting. Instead of creating a cycle where one person always rescues the other, it creates a path toward independence and resilience. The person who once relied on constant help begins to discover that they are capable of standing on their own. In this way, kindness becomes something even greater than temporary relief. It becomes a quiet force that helps others awaken their courage, their responsibility, and their inner power. And when compassion is balanced with wisdom, both the helper and the one being helped can walk forward with lighter hearts and stronger spirits. Victim identity: when someone becomes used to receiving sympathy and attention through their struggles, they may become desensitized to the emotional impact of their situation. They may unconsciously adopt suffering as part of their identity. There are moments in life when suffering visits every human being. Loss, disappointment, misunderstanding, and hardship are part of the path that everyone walks at some point. In these moments, feeling pain or asking for support is natural and deeply human. Yet sometimes something unusual happens within the mind. Instead of seeing suffering as a temporary visitor, a person slowly begins to see it as a permanent part of who they are. When this happens, the mind starts to build an identity around hardship. Instead of saying, "I am facing a problem," the feeling quietly changes to, "I am the one who always suffers." This belief may not always be spoken aloud, but it becomes deeply rooted inside a person's thinking. Over time, every new experience is interpreted through this belief. When someone carries this identity, the world begins to appear different to them. Ordinary challenges feel heavier, and small disappointments can feel like proof that life is always against them. Their mind becomes trained to notice every sign of difficulty while overlooking moments of peace or opportunity. The story they tell themselves becomes a story of constant struggle. Another subtle change begins to appear in their relationships. When a person is always seen as the one who is suffering, others naturally respond with sympathy and attention. Friends may listen carefully, offer comfort, and try to make things easier for them. In the beginning, this support can feel warm and reassuring, but the human mind easily grows attached to whatever brings comfort. If sympathy and attention appear whenever there is a problem, the mind may begin to hold on to those problems more tightly. Without realizing it, the person may repeat the same patterns of struggle because those struggles bring them connection and care from others. It becomes like wearing a familiar robe. Even if the robe is heavy and worn, it feels safe because it is known. Stepping outside of that role can feel frightening because it means letting go of the identity that has defined them for so long. The difficulty with this pattern is that it quietly limits personal growth. When someone sees themselves only as a victim of circumstances, they stop looking for the strength that already exists within them. They believe that change must come from outside, from other people, or from different situations. Yet the most powerful changes in life usually begin from within. Breaking this cycle requires awareness. The moment a person begins to notice the story they are telling about themselves, something important shifts. They begin to see that suffering may be part of their experiences, but it does not have to be their identity. When someone releases the belief that they are destined to struggle forever, space opens for a new way of living. Challenges still appear, as they do for everyone, but they are no longer seen as proof of weakness or misfortune. Instead, they become opportunities to learn, adapt, and grow stronger. Gradually, the person who wants to find themselves through suffering begins to discover another truth. Within them exists resilience, creativity, and the ability to shape their own path. As this realization grows, the heavy robe of constant victimhood begins to fall away. What remains is a lighter spirit, one that understands that difficulties may come and go, but they do not define the essence of who we truly are. Balanced compassion, true wisdom, is showing care and understanding while still encouraging others to take responsibility for their own lives. A compassionate heart naturally wishes to ease the suffering of others. When someone shares their struggles, the instinct to listen, comfort, and help is often immediate. This response reflects the deep connection that exists between human beings. People are not meant to walk through life completely alone, and kindness toward others brings warmth to both the giver and the receiver. Yet within compassion there must also be clarity. When kindness is guided only by emotion and not by wisdom, it can unintentionally create imbalance. A person may begin to absorb the troubles of others as if those burdens belong to them. They listen to every complaint, rush to solve every problem, and feel responsible for fixing every crisis that appears in someone else's life. At first this may seem like a noble act, but over time it can become heavy. When someone repeatedly places their problems into the hands of another, the helper may begin to feel overwhelmed. Their time, energy, and emotional strength slowly drain away. Instead of walking beside someone with support, they end up carrying the entire weight of the journey. Balanced compassion is different. It recognizes the suffering of others, yet it also understands that each person must walk their own path. True care does not mean removing every obstacle from someone's life. Instead, it means offering guidance, encouragement, and understanding while still allowing the other person to grow through their experiences. Imagine a traveler who is learning to climb a mountain. If someone carries them to the top every time they struggle, the traveler will never develop the strength needed to climb on their own. But if a guide walks beside them, offering advice and steady support while allowing them to take each step themselves, the traveler gradually becomes stronger and more confident. In the same way, wise compassion encourages independence rather than dependence. It allows people to feel supported without taking away their responsibility to face life. This approach may sometimes feel uncomfortable for both sides. The person who is used to being rescued may feel uncertain when they are asked to solve their own difficulties. The helper may feel guilty for not immediately stepping in to fix the situation. But within this space of responsibility, growth begins to happen. When people realize that they are capable of handling their own challenges, they begin to trust themselves more deeply. Each problem they solve becomes proof of their strength and resilience. For the one who offers support, balanced compassion also brings peace. They no longer feel trapped in an endless cycle of solving problems that are not theirs to carry. Instead, they become a calm presence in the lives of others, offering wisdom, perspective, and encouragement without losing their own sense of stability. This balance creates healthier relationships where both individuals grow. One person learns courage and self-reliance, while the other maintains kindness without becoming overwhelmed. Compassion, when guided by wisdom, becomes a powerful force that uplifts rather than weakens. In this way, caring for others does not mean losing oneself in their struggles. It means standing beside them with an open heart and a clear mind, helping them discover the strength that has always been quietly waiting within them. Real growth comes from self-responsibility. A person develops strength and transformation only when they begin solving their own challenges instead of relying on others to rescue them. Every human life is filled with challenges. No one walks through the world without encountering moments of difficulty, confusion, or pain. These experiences can sometimes feel overwhelming, and during such times it is natural to seek support from others. Yet there is an important truth hidden within life's struggles. The strength to rise above them is often discovered only when a person begins to take responsibility for their own path. When someone constantly relies on others to solve their problems, they may never realize how capable they truly are. Each time a difficulty appears, they look outward for rescue rather than inward for solutions. At first, this may seem easier and more comforting because someone else carries the burden, but over time, this habit quietly takes away an opportunity for growth. Strength is much like a seed hidden within the soil. If the seed is never given the chance to push through the earth on its own, it cannot become a strong tree. In the same way, when people are protected from every hardship, they may never discover the resilience that already lives within them. Life teaches its most valuable lessons through experience. When a person faces a challenge and works patiently to overcome it, something powerful begins to form inside them. Confidence grows, wisdom deepens, and the fear of future difficulties slowly fades. Each problem that is solved becomes a reminder that they are capable of handling more than they once believed. The journey towards self-responsibility does not mean rejecting kindness from others. Support, advice, and encouragement can still play an important role. But these forms of help are most valuable when they guide a person toward their own solutions rather than replacing them entirely. When someone learns to stand on their own while still appreciating the presence of others, a healthy balance is created. At first, this path may feel uncomfortable. A person who has long depended on others may feel uncertain when they are asked to face their challenges directly. Doubt may appear, and the mind may whisper that the task is too difficult. But if they take even a small step forward, they begin to see that progress is possible. With each step, their perspective begins to change. Problems that once felt impossible start to appear as temporary obstacles rather than permanent disasters. The mind becomes calmer because it no longer believes that every difficulty requires someone else to fix it. Instead, it begins to trust its own ability to adapt and respond. Over time, a quiet transformation takes place. The person who once felt trapped in endless crises begins to experience a sense of control over their life. They become less dependent on external rescue and more connected to their own inner strength. Relationships with others also become healthier because they are no longer based on constant rescue but on mutual respect and support. In the end, true growth comes when a person realizes that the power to change their life has always existed within them. Others may guide the way or offer a helping hand, but the steps forward must ultimately be taken by the individual themselves. And when someone discovers this truth, the path of life becomes lighter. Challenges still appear, but they are no longer feared. Instead, they are welcomed as opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more self-aware with every passing step.